When my alien maid spoke up, I realized she was more than a servant. Daniel lived alone in a small apartment on the edge of the city. He had always been independent, focusing on his work and little else. His life was predictable. Wake up, go to work, come home. He had friends, but not many, and they often complained that he spent too much time alone. Daniel didn't mind. He liked the quiet. He liked knowing exactly what to expect from his day. But lately he had started to notice that his apartment was becoming harder to manage. The pile of laundry on the couch had grown taller than he liked to admit, and dust seemed to settle faster than before. His kitchen counters were cluttered, and dishes sometimes stayed in the sink for days. Daniel hated clutter, but he also hated the effort it took to clean. After a particularly long week at work, he realized it might be time to get some help. He didn't know exactly what he expected when he called the cleaning service, but when they sent Leora, he felt a mixture of curiosity and relief. She arrived on a Monday morning carrying a small suitcase and a bright smile. Daniel was immediately struck by her presence. She moved gracefully, almost as if she were gliding instead of walking, and she had a calm confidence about her that made the apartment feel different, almost lighter. "Daniel," she said, bowing slightly. Her accent was soft, unusual, and he couldn't quite place where it came from. "I am Leora. I will help you with your home." Danielle nodded, slightly surprised at how polite and careful she was with her words. "Thank you," he said, trying to hide how curious he was about her. "I hope you can handle everything." "It's not a big place, but I'm a bit messy," Leora smiled. "Mess is temporary. Clean is permanent," she said, and Daniel laughed, not quite sure why. It wasn't a joke. It sounded more like a statement of truth. From the very first day, Leora impressed him. She moved quickly, but without rushing, cleaning every corner with precision. She didn't just dust the shelves. She polished them. She didn't just sweep the floor, she noticed small cracks and spots that Daniel had never seen before. She seemed to have an almost uncanny attention to detail, catching things that even he, as someone who liked order, had missed. Daniel watched her work and felt a strange mix of admiration and unease. She was quiet, mostly speaking only when necessary, but when she did, her words were thoughtful. She would ask him questions about why he arranged certain things in a particular way, or why he preferred certain routines. Sometimes she would offer small suggestions, like moving a chair slightly to catch more sunlight in the morning, or placing a plant on the counter to make the kitchen feel warmer.
Daniel had never had anyone care so much about such small details before.
Over the next few days, he began to notice more about her. Leora was not like any maid he had known. She didn't seem to get tired easily, and she remembered every small preference he mentioned, no matter how trivial. She could speak several languages, or at least phrases, which Daniel found fascinating. One morning she asked him if he wanted tea or coffee, but she said it in a language he didn't understand. When he shook his head, she switched seamlessly to English, pronouncing every word perfectly. "What language was that?" he asked. "Just something I learned," she said with a gentle smile. "It helps me understand people better." Daniel didn't press further, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. Her calm demeanor, her unusual knowledge, her ability to adapt and understand, all of it seemed different. Yet, at the same time, it was comforting. He started looking forward to coming home and seeing her quietly working, humming softly to herself, or organizing things in ways that made the apartment feel lighter, brighter, and more alive.
One evening, Daniel stayed late at work and returned home exhausted.
The apartment was spotless, the dishes done, and the living room arranged neatly as if it had been prepared for him. Leora was there, sitting on a chair reading a book. When he walked in, she looked up and smiled. "You are home late," she said. "You look tired. Do you want something to eat?" Daniel nodded. Thanks.
I didn't expect you to cook. I did not cook,
She said lightly, standing up. But I prepared something simple. You need energy. She handed him a small plate with neatly arranged food. It wasn't much, but it was warm, and it smelled comforting. Daniel ate silently, feeling a strange gratitude he couldn't quite explain. As he ate, he noticed the way she watched him. Not in a way that felt intrusive, but with attention, as if she could read more than just his expressions. There was a quiet intelligence in her eyes, a depth that made him pause. He had always thought of maids as background figures, invisible helpers who did their work and left. Leora was nothing like that. She seemed present in a way he had never experienced before, as if her mind and heart were fully engaged with the world around her. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's curiosity about Leora grew. He began asking her small questions about her life, where she was from, and what had brought her here. She would answer politely but briefly, often redirecting the conversation back to the tasks at hand. He noticed she never shared much about herself, yet she knew a lot about him. She remembered what he liked for breakfast, how he preferred his laundry folded, and even the way he liked his books arranged on the shelf. It was during these weeks that Daniel started noticing small oddities, things that didn't make sense. Leora seemed to know more than she should about science and technology, sometimes correcting him gently when he made minor errors in his work at home. She understood concepts that he had learned in university but forgotten over time. She also had an unusual way of observing people and situations, always seeing patterns that others would miss. One afternoon, Daniel caught her staring out the window, her eyes focused and thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Leora turned to him, her expression calm but serious.
Observing is important, she said. The 9Ds are dead in the world, undone.
Understanding comes before action. Sometimes humans act without seeing the full picture. Daniel was taken aback. It was a simple statement, but there was something profound in the way she said it. He realized she wasn't just a maid. She was someone who noticed, analyzed, and understood things on a level he hadn't expected. He began to see her in a new light, not as a servant, but as someone who carried knowledge and perspective far beyond what her role suggested. As the days passed, he also noticed her kindness. She didn't just clean, she cared. She would leave small notes reminding him to take breaks, suggesting books he might enjoy, or even preparing small treats on particularly stressful days. Her actions were quiet, subtle, but meaningful. She had a way of making the apartment feel alive, warm, and welcoming, and Daniel found himself looking forward to her presence more than he expected. One rainy evening, Daniel was sitting on the couch, watching the drops slide down the window, feeling unusually reflective. Leora was arranging some books on the shelf nearby. He watched her, thinking about how much she had changed his home and his life in just a few weeks. "You've done a lot for this place," he said softly, almost to himself. Leora paused, looking at him with her calm, unwavering gaze. "I do not do it for thanks," she said. "I do it because it matters. Small things matter." Daniel smiled, realizing he had underestimated her. He had hired her to clean his apartment, but she had already begun teaching him something more valuable: how to see, how to notice, and how to appreciate the small, meaningful things in life. That night, as he went to bed, Daniel thought about her words. He thought about the way she moved, spoke, and observed. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something extraordinary about her, something he didn't yet understand. And, for the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of anticipation, not for work or for routine, but for the presence of someone who had entered his life and quietly begun to change it. Daniel didn't know it yet, but his life was about to shift in ways he could never have predicted. Leora, the quiet, thoughtful maid with the strange accent and remarkable mind, was not just a helper. She was the beginning of something entirely new, something that would challenge his assumptions and show him that the world, and the people in it, were far more complex and fascinating than he had ever imagined.
And so, life continued. Leora cleaned, organized, and observed, while Daniel watched, curious and slightly unsettled.
The apartment was spotless, the routines smooth, and yet a quiet tension lingered, like the calm before a storm. It wasn't a bad tension. It was the kind that made him aware, awake, and alive. It was the kind that made him wonder, who was she really? And what had he brought into his home by letting her in? Weeks passed, and Daniel's curiosity about Leora grew stronger. Every day he noticed small things that made him wonder who she really was. It wasn't just her skill at cleaning or the way she organized the apartment. It was something deeper, something he couldn't name. Sometimes when she spoke, Daniel felt like she understood more than anyone he had ever met. One morning, Daniel returned from work earlier than usual. He had been under a lot of pressure at the office, and he felt exhausted. As soon as he stepped into his apartment, he noticed that everything was perfectly in order. The floors sparkled, the kitchen counters were clear, and even the books on the shelf were arranged in a new, neat pattern. Leora was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, folding laundry. She looked up as he entered. "You're home early today," she said, her voice calm and smooth. "Yes," Daniel replied, dropping his bag on the couch. "I thought I'd try to get some work done from home, but I ended up getting more tired than I expected." Leora nodded, her expression gentle but focused. "Rest is important. Your body and mind need balance." "Do not forget that." Daniel smiled at her words. They sounded simple, but somehow they carried a weight that made him pause. She wasn't just giving advice, she was making him think. He sank into the couch and watched her fold the clothes with steady hands. Every movement she made seemed purposeful, precise, and graceful. It was almost like watching someone perform a quiet dance. Over the next few days, Daniel began noticing even more unusual things about her. She seemed to know exactly when he needed something, often anticipating his needs before he even spoke. One evening, while he was working on his laptop, she appeared with a glass of water and a small plate of fruit.
"You forgot to eat," she said softly, placing the items on his desk. "You have been working too long."
"It is not healthy." Daniel looked at her, slightly embarrassed. "I didn't even realize it," he admitted. "Thank you." "You are welcome," she replied, smiling gently. Then, as if thinking aloud, she added, "Humans often forget the simplest things when they focus too much on tasks. Balance is key." Her words lingered in his mind long after she had left the room. Daniel realized that she had a way of seeing things he didn't. It wasn't just observation. It was understanding. She could read people, situations, and even moods with a clarity that he had never experienced before. One afternoon, Daniel had a small accident in the kitchen. He was trying to reach for a jar on a high shelf when a stack of plates wobbled dangerously. Before he could react, Leora's hand shot out, steadying the plates and preventing them from crashing to the floor. "You should be more careful," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Small accidents can cause big problems." Daniel was stunned. "How did you—" he began, but she just smiled and returned to her task, as if nothing had happened. From that moment, Daniel began paying closer attention to her. He realized that she wasn't just careful or observant. She seemed to have knowledge and skills far beyond what a regular maid would possess. She knew how to handle fragile items, how to fix minor problems in the apartment, and even how to organize things in ways that improved both efficiency. Curiosity gnawed at him. He wanted to know more about her past, about where she had come from, and why she was here. One evening after dinner, he gathered the courage to ask.
"Leora," he said cautiously, "can I ask you something personal?"
She looked at him, her expression calm and patient.
Of course, she replied. Where are you from? I mean, your accent, your knowledge, it's unusual.
You seem different. Leora's eyes softened, but she didn't answer immediately.
Instead, she looked around the room, as if considering her words carefully. Finally, she spoke. I come from far away, she said quietly. Not just a different city or country, but far away in ways that are hard to explain. My work here, it is temporary, but it allows me to learn about humans and their ways. Daniel frowned, trying to understand. Learn about humans? You mean like research? In a way, she said. But it is also personal. I am learning not just about tasks or routines, but about people, emotions, and life itself.
Her words puzzled him.
He didn't know what to make of them, but he sensed that she was being honest. There was no deception in her eyes, only truth, carefully measured and shared. In the following days, Daniel started paying more attention to the subtle ways she observed the world. He noticed that she would sometimes pause, watching people on the street from the window, or study a pattern in the rain on the pavement. She seemed to take in details that most people ignored, noticing gestures, expressions, and small movements. One evening while Daniel was cooking dinner, he accidentally dropped a knife. Leora reacted immediately, catching it before it could hit the floor. You should handle sharp objects carefully, she said softly. Even small mistakes can be dangerous. Daniel laughed nervously. You're always watching out for me, aren't you? I am aware, she replied, simply. It is my nature to observe and assist when necessary. Her words made Daniel think. She wasn't just a maid. She was someone who cared, someone who understood, and someone who had knowledge and awareness far beyond what he had imagined. The more he observed her, the more he realized that she was not ordinary. No, I was able to live. One night, Daniel was working late on a project at his desk when Leora appeared with a notebook. She handed it to him, without a word, then returned to folding clothes. Daniel opened the notebook and saw that it was filled with notes, sketches, and observations about his routines, habits, and preferences. Did you write all this? He asked, amazed. Yes, she said quietly. It helps me understand you better, and it allows me to assist more effectively. Daniel flipped through the pages, realizing that she had noticed things he hadn't even realized about himself. The way he arranged his desk, the way he preferred certain lighting, even the way he reacted to stress. She had recorded it all. You know a lot about me, he said, feeling a mix of surprise and admiration. I notice, she replied. Understanding is important. It allows action to be helpful, not harmful. Over the next few weeks, Daniel began trusting her more. He found himself sharing small details about his life, his thoughts, and even his worries. Leora listened without judgment, offering gentle guidance when necessary. She didn't push or lecture. She simply provided perspective, insight, and support. One afternoon, Daniel faced a minor crisis at work. He had made an error in a report that could have caused serious problems. He returned home frustrated and worried, unsure of how to fix the situation. Leora noticed immediately. You look troubled, she said softly. What happened? Daniel explained the mistake, feeling a bit embarrassed. Leora listened carefully, nodding as he spoke. When he finished, she said,
It is important to remain calm. Panic clouds judgment.
Take one step at a time and you will find the solution. Her advice was simple, but it worked. Daniel felt his mind clear, and he was able to think through the problem logically. With her guidance, he corrected the error and avoided a potentially serious issue. That evening, as they sat in the living room, Daniel realized something important. Leora was not just a helper. She was a guide, a teacher, and a presence that improved his life in ways he hadn't expected. He felt gratitude, respect, and even admiration for her. But alongside these feelings, a new curiosity emerged. Who was she really? Where had she come from? And how did she possess such knowledge, skill, and understanding? Daniel didn't know the answers, and Leora didn't offer them freely, but he sensed that there was more to her story, something extraordinary hidden beneath her calm exterior. And for the first time, he felt a mix of excitement and anticipation. He wanted to learn more, to understand more, and perhaps to see the world through her eyes. Life continued, with Leora performing her duties and Daniel observing, learning, and reflecting. The apartment remained neat and organized, but it was no longer just a living space. It had become a place of discovery, growth, and quiet wonder. Every day, Daniel noticed new things about her. The way she anticipated needs, the way she noticed patterns, the way she offered insight without being intrusive. She was more than a maid, more than a helper. She was someone remarkable, someone who challenged his assumptions and expanded his understanding of the world. One evening, Daniel watched her from the couch as she adjusted the blinds, letting the last rays of sunlight fill the room. He realized that he was no longer just curious. He was captivated. There was a mystery about her, a depth that he couldn't fully comprehend, and yet he trusted her implicitly. For Daniel, life had changed in subtle but profound ways.
Leora was not just a presence in his apartment. She had become a part of his life, a source of insight, guidance, and quiet wonder. And he knew that he had only begun to understand her, that the true story of Leora and her remarkable abilities was yet to unfold.
Daniel had always thought he understood his life. He had routines, work responsibilities, and a quiet apartment that was his sanctuary. Yet, lately, everything felt different. Leora had changed the rhythm of his days in ways he hadn't realized. She was no longer just a maid. She was someone whose presence made him pause, observe, and think differently. And now, he was about to discover just how extraordinary she truly was. It began on a Tuesday morning. Daniel was preparing for an important project presentation at work. He had spent days gathering data, analyzing reports, and refining slides.
Yet, as he reviewed his notes, one last time, he felt a sense of unease.
Something didn't feel right, though. He couldn't put his finger on it. Leora entered the living room quietly, carrying her usual cleaning supplies. She paused for a moment, looking at him with her calm, attentive eyes.
"You seem troubled,"
she said softly. I am, Daniel admitted. I have this presentation, and I feel like something's off with the data. I've checked it multiple times, but I can't figure out why it doesn't feel right.
Leora set her supplies down and walked closer.
She didn't rush or judge. She simply observed. May I? She asked, nodding toward his notes. Daniel hesitated, but then nodded. He handed her the papers, curious to see what she would do. She studied them carefully, her eyes scanning every number, every chart, every line of text. Daniel watched, fascinated by the intensity of her focus. After a few minutes, she pointed to a small section of the report.
This calculation is inconsistent, she said.
It may seem minor, but it could affect the overall results. Daniel blinked. How did you? I noticed the pattern, Leora replied simply. It did not match the rest. Small errors can change everything. He double-checked the calculation and, to his shock, she was right. The mistake was subtle, but it would have made his entire presentation flawed. Daniel felt a surge of gratitude and astonishment. Leora had not just noticed a small error. She had understood the bigger picture and guided him to the solution. Thank you, he said, his voice a mixture of relief and awe. I don't know how you knew that. I see patterns, she said calmly. Pay attention! That is all. But Daniel knew it was more than that. Her knowledge and awareness went far beyond simple observation. She seemed to understand things he hadn't realized himself, and her ability to anticipate problems and find solutions was uncanny. That evening, after the presentation, Daniel returned home exhausted but triumphant. His project had gone well, and his colleagues had praised him for the accuracy and clarity of his work. Yet, instead of celebrating alone, he found himself thinking about Leora. She had helped him avoid a disaster, and her calm, precise guidance had made all the difference. He sat in the living room, watching her as she tidied up. She moved with her usual grace, folding clothes, arranging books, and straightening cushions. But this time Daniel noticed something different, a sense of purpose and awareness that went beyond normal human behavior. Leora, he said hesitantly, can I ask you something more? Personal? She looked up, her expression patient. Yes. Are you human? He asked, the words feeling strange even as he said them. Leora paused, her gaze steady. For a moment, Daniel thought she might ignore the question or deflect it, but she didn't. Instead, she took a slow breath and spoke quietly. I am not entirely like the humans around you, she said. I come from a place and a way of life that is different. My work here is to observe, understand, and learn. I take on roles like this one to experience life among humans fully. Daniel's heart raced. He had sensed that she was different, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Different how? He asked, trying to stay calm. Different in knowledge, understanding, and perspective? She replied. I am here to learn, but I also help when needed. Your world is complex, and I want to see it as you do. Your joys, your struggles, your routines. Daniel sat back, absorbing her words. She wasn't lying, and she wasn't boasting. There was a quiet honesty in her tone, a gentle truth that made him feel both awe and curiosity. Over the next few days, Daniel's mind kept returning to her revelation. He watched her more closely than ever, noticing subtle details, the way she processed information, how she anticipated problems, and how she offered guidance without making him feel inadequate. He realized that she had been guiding him all along, not because she wanted recognition, but because she understood what was needed before he even did. One morning, a small incident tested her abilities further. Daniel was experimenting with a new cooking recipe, trying to prepare breakfast for himself. He was chopping vegetables when he accidentally knocked over a small bottle of oil. The bottle tipped, and oil began spreading across the countertop and floor. Before he could react, Leora was there, swiftly placing a cloth under the bottle and stopping the spill. She wiped the floor with precision and calmly organized the kitchen again. You must be careful with liquids, she said softly. Even a small spill can cause accidents or damage. Daniel watched, impressed. You always seem to know what will happen next, he said. I observe, she replied simply. Observation leads to prevention. Prevention is important. Her words reminded him of the many times she had subtly guided him without him realizing. He understood now that her role as a maid was only a part of what she was capable of. She had the skill, knowledge, and awareness to handle situations he couldn't, yet she had chosen to work quietly in his home, helping and observing. That afternoon, Daniel decided to test his curiosity further. He asked her more about her background. Where exactly are you from? How did you come to know so much? Leora looked thoughtful. I come from far away, as I said. Knowledge is something I have acquired to understand life fully. Bill's awareness and perception are necessary for my work here, but my focus is not to impress. It is to understand and assist. Daniel realized that her explanation was enough for now. He didn't need every detail. The important thing was that he understood her purpose and respected her choices. Later that week, another situation revealed the depth of her abilities. Daniel had misplaced an important document he needed for work. He searched his apartment frantically but couldn't find it. Leora, however, seemed to know where it was without asking a single question. She walked to a drawer, opened it, and handed him the document.
How did you know?
Daniel asked, astonished.
I noticed where you last placed it, she said calmly. Attention to habits allows understanding.
Understanding allows assistance. Daniel realized that her abilities weren't supernatural. They were a combination of keen observation, knowledge, and empathy. She understood patterns, habits, and human behavior better than anyone he had ever known. But the more he saw, the more he wondered about the limits of her knowledge. That night, Daniel sat alone, reflecting on everything he had discovered. Leora had saved him from mistakes, guided him through challenges, and revealed knowledge that was far beyond what he expected from someone in her role. He realized that he had been living in a limited world and her presence had expanded it. For the first time, Daniel felt a mixture of awe, respect, and even humility. He had underestimated her, assuming she was just a maid, just a helper. But now he understood that she was something more, someone extraordinary who had chosen to be part of his life in the quietest, most impactful ways. As days turned into weeks, Daniel began to embrace this new reality. He no longer saw her as a subordinate or just a presence in his apartment. She was a guide, a teacher, and a companion in understanding the world around him. He felt gratitude for her insight, respect for her abilities, and curiosity about the story she had yet to reveal fully. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Daniel decided to acknowledge her contributions openly. Leora, he said softly, I think I've been wrong about you.
You're not just a maid, you're...
More than that, you've changed the way I see things, and I
appreciate it more than I can say.
Leora looked at him, her expression calm and serene. I do what is necessary, she said gently, but I am glad that you see beyond the surface.
That is important. People often judge too quickly.
Observation and understanding take patience. Daniel smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection. For the first time, he realized that he and Leora were no longer just employer and maid. They were companions in a shared understanding of life, learning, and growth.
And in that moment, Daniel understood something profound. The world was far bigger, more complex, and more remarkable than he had ever realized.
Leora had shown him that, not with grand gestures, but with quiet, steady presence, insight, and care. For Daniel, life had changed forever. Leora was not just a helper, she was a guide, a friend, and a teacher. And he knew that the story of who she truly was and what she was capable of was only beginning to unfold. Life in Daniel's apartment had slowly transformed into something entirely new. The routines he once thought predictable now held layers of meaning, and the presence of Leora had become central to his days. He no longer saw her as a mere helper. She was someone who had quietly reshaped his understanding of life, patience, and care. Yet, even after weeks of observing her, Daniel knew he had only glimpsed part of her story. There was still so much about Leora he did not understand, and he wanted to. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Daniel sat at his desk, finishing some late work.
Leora entered carrying a small tray with tea.
She moved as always, graceful, precise, yet with a warmth that filled the room.
You've been working late again, she said softly, setting the tray beside him.
Do you not want to rest? Daniel looked up, smiling wearily. I could, but there's still some work to finish. I guess I don't know how to slow down sometimes. She poured the tea, her hands steady and careful. Slowing down is not weakness. It is preparation. The mind and body need both work and rest to function well. Daniel took the cup, feeling the warmth seep into his hands. "You always know the right thing to say," he said quietly. "I observe," she replied, her voice gentle. "Observation allows understanding, and understanding allows guidance." That night, after Daniel had finished his work and retired to the living room with a book, Leora sat nearby, quietly folding laundry. As he glanced at her, a thought struck him. He had learned so much from her actions and her quiet words, but he had never truly asked about her experiences, about what life had been like before she came into his world.
Leora, he began hesitantly, "I realize I've learned a lot from you already, but I don't really know much about you. Can you tell me
About your life before you came here?" Leora paused. She looked at him with her calm, thoughtful eyes, as if weighing how much to share. Finally, she spoke. "I have traveled far," she said quietly. "Do it."
I have seen many places, met many people. My role here is temporary, but it allows me to understand humans more fully."
In my world, knowledge and observation are highly valued. We learn not only to live, but to understand the lives of others, to help where needed, and to avoid unnecessary harm. Daniel listened, captivated. Her words carried an air of quiet dignity. There was depth to her story, a life lived with intention and purpose that was difficult for him to fully grasp. "So,
"You've chosen to be here with me?" he asked softly. "Yes," she replied.
I chose this place to learn, to observe, and to assist. And in doing so, I am also learning about connection, trust, and the subtle ways humans influence one another's lives." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. Leora had come into his life not by chance, but by choice. Had Abiket did not be allowed to go wrong. She had not only changed the way he managed his home and work, but also the way he thought about people, relationships, and life itself. In the following days, Daniel noticed that his appreciation for her went deeper. He didn't just admire her skills. He respected her wisdom, her patience, and her unwavering calm in moments of chaos. It was as though she carried a quiet strength that grounded him, a presence that reminded him to slow down, to notice, and to act thoughtfully. One afternoon, Daniel faced a minor emergency. While preparing lunch, he accidentally knocked over a hot pan. The pan tipped dangerously and the contents began to spill. Leora reacted instantly, steadying the pan with both hands and carefully guiding it back onto the counter. "You must focus," she said softly. "Even small distractions can lead to accidents." Daniel laughed nervously, realizing he had become reliant on her presence in ways he hadn't expected. "I guess I've been careless," he admitted. "You are learning," she replied. "I can't read. Mistakes teach, but observation prevents repetition." It was in moments like these that Daniel fully understood her value, not just as a helper, but as someone whose insight and attention could prevent harm and bring clarity. He had relied on her wisdom without fully recognizing it, and now he felt a mixture of gratitude and awe. That evening, Daniel decided to try something new. He had been hesitant to treat her as more than a maid, but he realized that their relationship had grown beyond that. He invited her to sit with him as he reflected on his day.
"You've done so much for me, Leora," he said quietly.
"I realize I've underestimated you. You're not just a helper. You've taught me to see things differently, to think more clearly, and to value even the smallest actions." I want you to know that I respect you and appreciate you more than I can say." Leora's eyes softened. "I am glad you understand," she said. "Respect and recognition are important, but action and understanding are more important still. You have learned, and that is what matters." Over time, Daniel began to integrate her lessons into his own life. He no longer rushed through tasks or ignored details. He paid attention to his environment, his work, and even the small interactions he had with neighbors and colleagues. Leora's influence had quietly reshaped the way he lived, giving him a sense of mindfulness and awareness he had never experienced before. One morning, Daniel woke to find Leora standing by the window, observing the street below. He watched her for a moment, noticing the focus and calm in her stance. It struck him again how much he had changed his life, not through grand gestures, but through consistency, care, and insight.
Good morning, he said, approaching her.
Good morning, she replied, turning to smile. The day has begun.
Observation and awareness are ready. Daniel laughed softly. You always make everything sound so
Important. Because it is important, she said simply. Small things lead to big changes. Awareness of the small is the path to understanding the whole. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel realized that he and Leora had formed a partnership built on trust, respect, and quiet understanding. He no longer saw her as a servant or subordinate. She was a guide, a companion, and a friend. He trusted her judgment, valued her insights, and appreciated the subtle ways she improved his life. One evening, as they shared a simple dinner together, Daniel spoke from the heart. Leora, I want you to know something. You've changed me. You've helped me see things I would have missed, understand things I didn't think about, and appreciate life in ways I never imagined.
I don't know how to thank you. Leora smiled, her eyes reflecting calm and warmth.
You do not need to thank me, she said softly. Change is not done for thanks.
Change happens when understanding occurs. You have learned, and that is its own reward. Daniel reached out, placing a hand on hers gently. Then let's continue learning together, he said. Not just me from you, but both of us, seeing the world in new ways. She nodded, a small smile on her face. That is a good choice, she said. Growth is better shared. From that moment on, their lives moved forward with a new rhythm. Daniel became more mindful, attentive, and reflective, while Leora continued to assist, guide, and observe, quietly shaping their shared environment and experiences. Their bond grew deeper, built not on hierarchy, but on mutual respect, understanding, and care. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, Daniel looked at her and realized that he had never felt so connected to anyone before. You know, Leora, he said softly, when you first came here, I thought you were just a maid. I didn't realize how much you would change my life. I did not come to change your life, she replied gently. I came to understand it. But in doing so, I could not help but influence it. Influence is natural when understanding is present. Daniel smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He had gained not only a helper, but a friend and a teacher. He had learned to appreciate the subtleties of life, the importance of mindfulness, and the value of someone who truly sees you.
As evening turned into night, Daniel reflected on the journey he had shared with Leora.
She had come quietly into his life, performed her duties with care and precision, and revealed a depth of wisdom and awareness that had quietly reshaped him. She had shown him that life was not just about routine or efficiency, but about observation, understanding, and connection. And in that quiet, simple realization, Daniel felt a profound sense of peace. He had opened his home to Leora, and in doing so, he had opened his mind, heart, and life to something extraordinary. He knew that their story was still unfolding, but he was ready for whatever came next, knowing that he and Leora would face it together, partners in understanding, growth, and quiet wonder. For Daniel, life had truly changed. He no longer saw the world as small or predictable. With Leora by his side, he realized that even the simplest actions could hold meaning, and that the people we welcome into our lives have the power to change us in ways we never expected. And as he looked at Leora, Sitting calmly beside him, he knew that she was more than a helper. She was a presence, a teacher, and a friend, and he would always value what she had brought into his world.